At the beginning of COVID-19, the whole world rushed to a health response. Experts said this is a pandemic, so we need gloves, and we need soap, and we need masks. And the women in Côte d'Ivoire said, I can't let my child starve for a cough. You think this is a health problem. I think it's an economic problem. The markets are closed. My business is closed. I can't feed my kids. And we listened to those women. Their stories changed the course of how we reacted. With some support and some training, those women organized to make hundreds of thousands of masks that they sold to earn an income and to protect their communities. And as a result of those women and their expertise in their own lives, CARE was able to get food to 4.3 million people in 2020. That's the power of listening to the story, of understanding the data, and using it to change what you do. And it's most important to do that when the data and the stories tell you that you are doing it wrong.
Big data has told us to believe that all data is objective, that it is neutral, that it is truth. Nothing could be more false, because data can conceal as much as it shows. It can force people to be invisible. It can steal the voices of women and girls, all under the guise of objectivity. But really, data is only as good as the people who collect it and analyze it. Let me give you 2 examples. The first is hunger. Last year, we analyzed 84 policies and plans meant to address world hunger. We found that 40% of those overlooked women and girls, didn't even use the word women. Only 4% of those plans talked about women and girls as agents, as actors who needed to be part of the solution. And we know that that's wrong, because we know when we've talked to people around the world, when we've listened to what they have to say, we hear things like, men are skipping 3 meals a week, women are skipping 4. Men are eating less at some meals, women aren't eating at all. A second example, Afghanistan. I spent some time there last summer, and one of my tasks was to help conduct a survey to ask people, how are conflict and COVID-19 and the drought affecting you? One of the questions that we asked was, has anybody, any other humanitarian, have they asked you what it is that you need? 70% of the men that we spoke with said, yes, someone has asked me. For women, it was the exact opposite. 70% of the women that we spoke with said no one had ever bothered to ask them what they needed.
In April of 2020, the numbers showed us that for women in Cox's Bazar, one of the largest refugee camps in the world in Bangladesh, mobility was a problem. The numbers said women weren't really leaving the house. And we thought that's a problem about COVID. Social distancing and hygiene kits and masks, women will be able to leave the house. And then we talked to the women, and the women said, oh, I can't leave the house because the men in my life think COVID is caused by women's rights. And the way to end COVID is to end women's rights. That is a completely different story. It's a completely different problem. The numbers showed us that there was a problem, but only by listening to women could we start to understand a solution. Left on our own, if we had just fed those numbers into an algorithm and hoped for the best, we would have solved the wrong problem. It's a completely different world to need masks and soap than it is to not be allowed to leave your own house. We need to listen to the women and understand, because they're the ones who are living through the problem. It is their lives. People will often tell you, you need to give women a voice. That is nonsense. Women have a voice. The women in Cox's Bazar have a voice. They don't need me to give it to them. They need me to listen to it. They need you to listen to them. They need policymakers and the United Nations and donors to listen to their stories and to understand that because they are the ones who live the problem, they must be a part of the solution.
The problems that humanitarians are facing are larger than ever. At the beginning of this year, 274 million people needed emergency life-saving assistance, and the United Nations estimated that providing that would cost $41 billion. And that was even before the conflict broke out in Ukraine. We need good data for good responses. Except that humanitarians aren't always so good with their data. Back in 2010, a team of researchers came out with a report called Sex and Age Matter, and they found that collecting sex and age disaggregated data was key to providing effective, impartial humanitarian responses. Now, those same researchers are getting ready to release an update to that report. And they've found that while humanitarians have made some progress at collecting data, they still aren't really analyzing it. They aren't using it. They aren't listening to it. And that failure has a human cost beyond people not getting the help that they need. We've estimated that people around the world spend at least 1.3 million hours every year telling their story to humanitarians, giving them the information and the data that they need to provide assistance and to do that well. Can you imagine? It is one of the worst periods of your life. Maybe you have just fled a conflict. Maybe there's a drought in your hometown. And somebody comes to you and they say, tell me your story. So you take time out of your day to talk to that person, to tell them what it is that's happened to you, to tell them what you need. And they promise to help you. And then days and weeks and months go by and that help never comes. How would you feel?
Change is possible. It's more than possible. Change is happening every day. This is Raheel, and she's in a savings group in Niger. And since COVID started, she's been answering surveys to explain what's been happening in her life since COVID started. And we took the data back to Raheel and the women in her group, and we said, these are your stories, and here's what we see. When we hear the data, here's what we see. Tell us, what's happening here? And Raheel looked at that data and she says, I see a problem. I see a hole. Women in the minority in my community don't show up in this data because none of the information is available in their language. And because she could see that in the data, she went to the well every morning and gave information sessions about COVID in the minority language so women could have options about what to do next. And so they could be informed and ready to take action. And she started a radio show so that she could reach even more women. And now she's a celebrity, and the mayor of her community comes to her when he needs to solve a problem. Raheel says, I feel happy and proud. I help in my own way. That's what's possible when people who will take action and who can take action see the data. It doesn't sit in a spreadsheet in a line somewhere that no one ever looks at. Get it to the people who can make a change. Or how about in Uganda? Women refugees from South Sudan had to walk miles every week and every month to collect food because they were hungry. And it was convenient for the humanitarians to set up food distribution a long way away. And those women said, that is dangerous for me. Every mile I am on the road, I am at risk. I need you to make it convenient for me and not convenient for you. And those women said, well, what can we do? It's the United Nations. How can we change them? So they asked for some help to write letters because they don't read and write. And they asked for help to write letters to the United Nations. And they didn't get an answer. And they said, well, that's not acceptable. we can do better than this. What do we do now? And they organized, and they decided on a strike. So they walked all of those miles to the distribution point, and then they refused to take the food. They said, we will not accept this food until you make it convenient for me instead of for you. And now those women walk minutes instead of miles. Change is possible when you act on stories, when you get data into the hands of people who will make a change, and when you look at data and you use it to make a change.
You can be part of this change. You already are. Whether you think about it or not, you are consuming data all day, every day. Question that data. The next time you watch coverage of the conflict in Ukraine, ask yourself, how are women being affected? What do they need? The next time someone tells you that they have a solution to a big global problem, ask yourself, is that person affected by that problem? And if they aren't, have they talked to people who are? What did those people say? Beyond that, you are in positions of tremendous power. You have resources that you can donate to organizations like CARE or to the United Nations. But more importantly, you have a voice that you can use to question data, to be like Raheel, to look for gaps and to figure out ways to fill them. A voice that you can use to demand that women and girls around the world are listened to, and a voice that you can use to demand accountability. There is no one in the world so insensitive as someone who is convinced that they have the truth because the data told them so. Question that truth. Question that data. And make sure that the data that you are consuming isn't making someone invisible, but is listening to and amplifying the voices of the people that it came from. Thank you.